Hello everybody, welcome to number 27. I'm Jack and this is the Frankenlees. Now I think most people know that possibly the biggest weak point of certainly the S1 Elises is the gear change. So it's a really good job that I've managed to source an upgraded shifter kit from Prodimex. Now I'll put the links to all this in the video description, but essentially I got hold of Sheldon who designed it and runs this, and he offered to get me one of these to test. So full disclosure, I haven't paid for this. The normal retail price for this kit is I think £550. That's for the shifter, the base for the shifter there, the upgraded bell crank for the back as well, all the various fixings. And these two are two little options that I think come to, I think they're £20 and £30 each. These are upgraded links for the gear change cables, and this is an upgraded sort of linkage for that bell crank as well. So we'll have a look at all that in more detail later. One more thing, since I was doing this, I thought I may as well also replace the gear change cables. So thank you very much to Eliseparts. I did pay for these, albeit with a little discount. But thank you very much, Ian at Eliseparts. These all, I just thought it might as well, if I'm going to the whole hog and doing everything, then I need to, I might as well get some new ones as well. So first of all, what do you get in the kit? Well, this is the upgraded sort of gear change, and I have to say it is amazingly well made. I'm really impressed with it. It appears it's a very nicely crafted thing, basically. So the kit, maybe, you know, at £550, I initially thought the kit was quite expensive, but if you look at what else is on the market and what you get for that money, I don't think it's actually that bad at all. So I think this is going to be a great improvement on the standard one. And I will talk to you, I'll show you where the weaknesses are in the standard system as well, and this does seem to address all of them. So you get that, then at the back of the car, under the engine, there's this bell crank, which is operated by each cable, which again is definitely a weak point there, and again this is very nicely machined with bearings, absolutely no slop. The various fixings here that we have, basically various bolts. There's a couple of riv nuts which I believe are optional, but we'll see when I get to fit it. This is the front of the gear change, what would you call it? The stabilizing. It's to mount the upgraded gear change, basically. And again, really nicely made, really nicely machined. Everything's made out of aluminium. It's very nice, very light. These are upgraded ends for some of the gear change cables. And this is the upgraded sort of bell crank linkage at the back. I've removed the shroud so I can just show you the first weak point in the gear change, and it is this whole mechanism, which is extremely cheap and pretty nasty. So you can see here there's a fair bit of side-to-side movement, and that is even though it was much worse before. I have myself changed the bronze bushing, which is internal here, so it was much more worn. It had a lot more side-to-side movement because of that pivoting in there. But there's also a fair bit of slop front to back. It is now in gear, and you can see how much slop there is. And once we've done everything, we'll see how much improved that is. But I'm expecting not just the slop to be taken out, but the actual feel to probably be a bit better. As I mentioned, I've already worked on this and improved it. It was much worse before. But the first thing is going to be to take this out and fit the new unit, and also swap out the gear change cables. The end joints on the Eliseparts cables are actually much better than the originals, but they won't be as long lasting as the upgraded ones that Sheldon from Prodimex sent me, so I'm going to put these on. Next step for me is to take this gear shift mechanism off. So you've got the two cables going, so this one I've already popped off the ball joint. This one I have also freed just with a pry bar. Next, there's some of the wiring that was attached to it, but then there are a couple of 10mm bolts, it looks like, I think is all that's holding it in place. So just going to get those off. let's just compare the two. So obviously this has rubber bushings, now it's free, it's no longer kept in place, but you can sort of see the difference in quality between the standard mechanism, which is really done on the cheap, and the Prodimex. Okay, next thing is I need to remove the handbrake cover so that I can get this bit of plastic off and just get some good access. There's an Allen bolt there, and then there are two 13s there. So first of all, get the cables out, and I removed the clips that hold them in place. Okay, now this, not 100% sure how I am going to get that out, because that won't push through. So not 100% sure how I'm going to get this out, apart from maybe taking this apart and then sliding it that way. Certainly doesn't look like it's going to come out from here because there's this in the way. Getting the gear selector cable out is proving to be quite a faff actually, because I've had to take the seat out, which is good. This all needs a bit of a clean, to be honest, anyway. But it just won't go past the handbrake, so the handbrake needs to be taken out. I'm not 100% sure how. I've released the cable, which is just on a little pin with a little split pin to hold it on the other side, but I think I'm going to have to remove these, but they look weird because they look like they're welded on the other side. Anyway, I'm going to have a go at that. Okay, finally, let's take way longer than it should, but that cable is finally out. The cable's removed, I've cleaned it up as much as possible. Now, you don't have to worry about that if you're not replacing the cables. It's only because I'm replacing the cables that I had to get the handbrake off. Otherwise, you would be able to do this without that. But next step is to get this out and replace it with that. So this is what the original bell crank under the engine is like, and you can see that there is a lot of slop in there. Some of it, a tiny bit, is in the gearbox itself, but there is also, you can actually see that there's slop in the mechanism itself. Now the link between that bell crank and the gearbox pivot actually looks like it had these little rubber covers on it, but it looks like it's been upgraded already. So I don't know if I'll change that, because the one that looks on there looks fine already. But there's definitely room for improvement. So the first thing to do when we're doing this kit is, obviously, if you're not replacing the cables like me, all you need to do is just disconnect them as I just have. There's just these little clips that go under there, like that. You pull them out, and then there's little pins that hold them in place. So there's the old bell crank off with this, which, as I said, is an upgraded part anyway, but I will use the one supplied by Sheldon at Prodimex. And this is the replacement bell crank, which, as you can see, it's even got a ball bearing there, so absolutely quite a different item there. Right, new bell crank is in place and it's as smooth as. So the kit comes with two little plastic bushers like that to go on either side. One is already in there on the other side, but when this one is put in, it's a bit too thick to get all the way for the split pin to go through, so I'm just going to sand it down slightly and just shave it off a little bit. I spoke to Shard and he said, yeah, just if that's the case, just sand it down slightly. Just putting the crossgate cable back in, and there was a couple of things actually, so I had to slightly enlarge the path there because it wouldn't go through. The Elise cables one was slightly thicker. The other one was able to push from front in, this one though, to get it in. Anyway, minor thing. Also, I had to, the new linkage, because you don't undo it there, comes with some grub screws. That means that you can release it. To put this bolt in for the crossgate cable, I had to basically release it to make room, and now just sort of turning it in. So gearbox end is all ready to go. Alright, now for the front end, this is how it all works. So you retain the old sort of frame. I'm going to clean it up a bit, but the frame previously, sits on some spacers to hold it up at the right hand. Oh, hold on, what am I doing here? Yeah, it's this way round. So normally it sits on some spacers. There's some alley spacers and then there's some plastic spacers as well here to get it to sit at the right height. Let's get those in place. So what happens essentially is these aluminium spacers at the front are no longer needed because this, the new sort of supporting frame, which adds a bit of strength and stiffness, goes like this. Then this has mounting holes front and two at the back. Two middle holes as well. Those two middle holes go in the original seat. So it mounts like that, which is very neat. Now, I was thinking I didn't really want to hide this because it's so nice, because it is made for the original shroud to sit on top of it. So I was just going to paint this black, but there's the wiring that's going through and everything, and you can see the shift cable, so it's never going to look lovely really. I mean, this looks nice, but the rest of it's going to look untidy if it's not covered, so I'm no longer going to do that. I'm not going to bother painting that. I'm going to mount it as it is, and then I will use that shroud, which is a shame because this is lovely. Right, so the instructions say to fit that cross brace, the front brace first, so one of the things I initially had issues with, just with the shoulder, is how to get to that Allen bolt. And it's through there, but you kind of have to have a ball-ended Allen key, and even then it's a little bit fiddly. It will work, but now the kit is supplied with an extra riv nut, so if you wanted to, you could drill another hole there, put a riv nut, and you would have even extra support. But I think it's probably a bit overkill. I think it's going to be all right without the extra riv nut. I'll see how it is when it's all mounted, but if it feels stiff enough, I'm just going to use the original mountings. And we get to the exciting bit. Next step is to remove this side pivot arm because there's a screw underneath that we need to get to, and that will also be helpful actually in attaching the bolts that go up into the frame. So I've already loosened, there's two grub screws, already loosened them. I presume it will, it will come off. I'll have to look at how. There you go, that is out. So now I have more access because two Allen bolts need to go up here, so two of these fellas to hold that in place. Right, next just remove this pin. It's with a little Allen screw. Now it's ready for these countersunk bolts to go in. Now, So I'm almost done really. I've just got to reassemble the shifter, connect up the, I think that's the selector rod, and then I have to make the sort of the final adjustments. And just one thing to mention as well is I've been using the old instructions which are currently on the website. They're about to be updated, but so I've had a few little quandaries, a few little issues in sort of assembling it, but if you use the new ones, hopefully it will be, those things will be sorted out. Right, it's in. I think it's now going into all the gears, but I want to double check. But that does look right. So, what's that? Yeah, that's reverse. So I've just got the GoPro going. Just want to see it changing gear. I had to do quite a lot of adjustment and faffing around with the various linkages. So I've had this pivot off quite a lot to get the right length on the cables, but that's also because these are replacement cables. I think they're slightly different to the ones that were in it originally. So let's see anyway. So first gear, second gear, yeah, third, fourth, fifth, and now reverse. Reverse not quite going in. So reverse has always been quite tricky on this car, but it is even harder now to get it to select. So, right, I think I've got to the bottom of the problem, and that is that the rear upgrade kit on these lovely little spherical ball joints, as opposed to the standard cables which come with a little plastic bush. The problem is these, when they go on the Eliseparts cables, they're a bit longer. They don't go in quite, they don't turn in quite as far, so there's a few mil out, so you can't adjust it quite right. It'd probably be all right with the standard cables. I don't know, I'll speak to Sheldon about it, but I've already changed one, and now it's almost going into every gear, but I think I'm going to have to change this one as well, because I can't shorten it anymore, and it needs to be shorter. All right, I found the issue, and I don't think it was actually the ball end. This bracket here, which houses the, well, actually, I say I found the issue. I was on the phone with Sheldon, and Sheldon told me to try this. But basically, this mount here for the cables, it was moved all the way forward. I had moved it back before, and then I thought, no, I'll put it the way it was before. It's actually adjustable, so I've just moved it back, and now reverse goes in perfectly, which is great. Finally then, the bit that you've all been waiting for. I'm driving it. What is it like? Slow down so you can hear what I'm saying. It really is a massive improvement. I mean, so it should be, because with everything that comes with it, but it really is. I mean, it just feels, it feels much more precise. It's got a slightly different weight to it. I think it's the spring is maybe slightly heavier than the spring that was on the original mechanism, the crossgate spring that is. So it feels more positive. Like, you know, you've changed gear. It's more predictable. It is really good. It is really, really good. So, well done, Sheldon. Prodimex. And, sorry, I almost forgot the name there. But yeah, no, it is a great thing. Fitting it was a massive faff, but there's two things, I guess. First of all, I made a few mistakes, as I always traditionally make sure I do. But secondly, I was working off the old instructions. This is a new updated kit. The new instructions, I think, are now online. So that should definitely make things easier. Secondly, I replaced the cables at the same time, which added a lot of complications. So without that, it would have been a lot easier. And generally speaking, it is a fiddly job anyway. There's lots of taking bits apart, putting them back together. Not complicated, just fiddly. But on the whole, I think, you know, for what you get for your value for money, I think it's definitely well worth it. Would I put my own money with it? Absolutely. So if I didn't have it on my car, it's just much more positive, and I can feel, normally on a little run like this as well, I would have already got to one, maybe not quite missed gear, but sometimes it's just, you just don't know quite what gear you're getting into, and it just gives you a lot more confidence, this. It just, because there's much less movement. So yeah, no, on the whole, it feels fab. Well worth the money, I think. So thank you to Sheldon at Prodimex. Thank you to Eliseparts as helping me with bits, as they have done previously. And thank you all for following me, for looking at the videos. I really appreciate it. I just love this little car, so you know, I'm really absolutely stoked. See you for the next video.